You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech. I'm your host, Dimitri Vitsa. I'm also the founder and CEO of Rock, Paper, Scissors, a music tech PR firm. We also have the Music Tectonics Conference, which we launched in LA last year. We'll see what's happening this October. We've got a venue. Everything's planned, but I don't know. The world has its own ideas about what should happen. And we're doing lots of online events. In fact, I came across this next guest via one of our online events. We're doing weekly Webs Days, which are online panels and networking opportunities. And one of his colleagues came to some of the events, and we reconnected. So I'd like to welcome to the show Darshan Kaler. He's the CEO of Tradable Bits, based out of Vancouver, BC. How you doing, Darshan?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We'd like to just jump right in. Our listeners are a lot of different people involved in music technology, and I think they'd like to hear what Tradable Bits is. So let's just start off with an overview. What do you got?
Well, Tradable Bits is a fan-based marketing platform used by sports, music, and entertainment business to understand the fans, their interactions, to personalize their overall experience, either in venue, online, or potentially bringing product for the fan base that they have in their region.
Cool. All right. So that's a good top line overview. Before we dig into what that means exactly, what gave you the idea to start Tradable Bits?
Well, my background is technology. So I was director of Olympic services during the 2010 Winter Olympics here in Vancouver. And the most interesting part that I saw in 2010 was that social media just really democratized broadcasting. Everybody was a broadcaster. Everybody was an editor. We were competing with, a mom, posting something on Facebook about, a time or an experience that they've had. And so the competition became, not only just from a broadcaster's perspective, but really leveraging the entire technology that everybody had on their hands, to share their experiences. So at that moment, I knew there was something very special about, social media in general at that time, and wanted to learn more about it. And so we started to roll out a suite of apps early on, and right after 2010, and by the end of 2011, we had, basically almost 24.5 million monthly active users on the platform, specifically tied to Facebook. And so, what gave me the biggest idea out of that was that one, the way we connect online is so much more different, especially, looking back, that's 10 years ago. And two, the way we are in different networks has value. So, the way you are on Facebook might be different than LinkedIn, and certainly different than Twitch if you're playing games, but you're still the same person. And so, for us, we knew that there was something compelling about that. And then the music and the sports and the entertainment industry was really fan centric already. So building out what we call fan based marketing was really the start in 2013.
Gotcha. So you saw sort of this democratization of people reporting on their experiences via social media, and you saw there was a potential for how that could be leveraged for marketing.
Absolutely. Content in general at that time was predominantly public. Today is, there's a lot more content that's private. However, when you're taking a look at how we engage digitally, it really is a representation of our digital footprint. So businesses at that time, really didn't really quite understand the value of what social digital was, and we wanted to be the gap to fill that gap and build that bridge between this particular technology that was really flourishing with a whole bunch of different new interactions that were happening, and for the businesses to really focus on their core business, and then our technology becomes the middle ground to kind of bridge the gap to understand the fan base in each of these ecosystems. So we tie in not only their enterprise data, not to get too technical, but there's a lot of data for a large enterprise, from purchasing behavior, ticketing behavior, and all of this stuff. But certainly on the social side, It's more what we call graph. You're not a transaction. You are an entity that kind of has links and hooks within your digital footprint. You have friends, you have things you follow, you have listening behaviors, all of that stuff creates a huge value of your footprint.
So before we dive in a little deeper on that, because you worked for the Olympics, it sounds like you came at this from a sports perspective and then moved into music. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, if you go to any Olympic event, uh, music and sports really go hand in hand. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Festivities at the end, there's always music involved. Depending on which athlete you're dealing with, they're inspired by music. So the combination between the two was just natural.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we were setting up a stage, broadcasting, live games, or races, or whatever that may be, it always followed a medium of storytelling that include music, and the medium specifically tied um, to broadcasting.
Right. Right. So let's talk about each of the offerings from the company. Let's start with how you help, say, festivals and promoters find fans.
Well, when we started working on the music side, on the promotion side, what we realized were, a lot of people were quite interested in connecting with the brand. So whether you're interested in a regional festival, or maybe you're in Chicago, you got Lollapalooza. If in Austin, you got ACL, and if you're in New York, you got GovBall. And if you want to do a destination, you might be going to Bonnaroo, for a camping trip. Um, there was a lot of different types of festivals, but what's the most compelling and most important part out of that was the fan experience. So you go to a festival with a group of friends to experience something unique. And so we based our technology specifically from that. So everything from understanding the fans that they interact onto a website, the mobile experience, and certainly down to the marketing initiative. So from a technology perspective, tied to the promoters, in this case, anybody who's dealing with any event that they're promoting, they really had to understand better the fans, the segmentation, the personalization they can kind of do. Everything from automation on email segmentation, so that if you're interested in a certain type of artist, maybe that's focused on the communication on that side. If we're trying to find people are more likely to go and go to a Bonnaroo festival, we might be looking at multiple regions, throughout the U.S. In a certain demographic that shows interest in a given genre of music. But all of that stuff is broad. But in reality, our system takes every interaction that comes in to the brand, and starts creating that holistic view of a single fan view. So you can start to understand all their connections, their interests, the listening behavior, their interactions, um, and in the end, that is private data from the promoter side, and so they use it in a very very strategic way, so that they're not mass broadcasting all kinds of different things. So the old days of marketing, large funnel, bring it down, find the leads. This is very much the opposite. You start from the people you know, and then make sure you curate and create that personal connection for each one at scale.
So it sounds almost like a HubSpot for live events.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. HubSpot's done a tremendously good job specifically for creating a CRM for transactions. Um, Except on our side, we kind of took it the next step further. For us, when you're dealing with the music side, it's not about how many tickets you bought, or where what event you went to last. It's about your interactions with the brand. So it could be interactions directly to an artist, interactions directly with a property owner, whether it be like Lollapalooza or ACL, or it could be a venue that you have a affinity with. All of that is a bit different when you're dealing in a CRM world. So rather than thinking of them as simple tags, if if you can look at it that way, this is more organic. So it's adapting because you might be interested in certain types of music in a given week, and it might change a month from now. Um, so it doesn't mean that you don't like that previous music anymore, but it certainly you have a preference for for something that's might have come up that's recent to you, and so you want to make sure that you have a way of connecting with people as they adapt their emotions really as they interact in the music industry.
So you basically are saying that in the case of say festivals or promoters venues, that you're helping them ingest their existing data and parse it and gather insights. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, and all the data we're talking about here is what we call, in the world, first party data.
Mm-hmm.
It's not being scraped and taken from multiple different pieces or resold. This is every interaction that happens. So if you go to a particular website or download a mobile app, or enter a contest or create your own personalized playlist for a given festival, it's about understanding those interactions and then having a feedback to the fan so that they get value by connecting. One, they can be notified of upcoming shows, all the way down to recommendation of things that they might want to see or add to their schedule if they're going to a given festival. So all of that is a give and take, right? So the fact that you are able to automate some of those experiences for the fan, um, and allow them to connect with each other in a simple way, um, is a game changer for improving the fan experience.
So you're not ingesting any social media or any people aren't logging in with Spotify or Apple Music to create this data. It's literally from interactions with the online and app properties of the promoter or festival.
Well, they would have their own identity in each one. So we do allow them to connect via those networks. So let's say, for example, if you were going to a given festival and Tradable Bits was being used in the platform, you would have an opportunity to create your lineup, have people connect via their Spotify login, for example, and we can then look at your listening behavior and provide surfacing the best artists for you to go and take a look at, including recommending additional artists that you've never seen before. Um, so that in itself has that give and take type of scenario where to improve that overall scheduling or surfacing of different artists and listening piece. We have to have that connection to happen on a Spotify basis for that one particular fan engagement piece.
But you're not doing Facebook and Instagram or any other kind of social media logins or ingestion.
We have when we take a look at those, we call those social logins. So we connect, and we're technology partners with Facebook. We're technology partner with Spotify. We're technology partners, with Twitter. If you want to connect Twitch or LinkedIn, it depends on what you're trying to do and to improve that experience. It's not about just
Mm-hmm.
connecting with Facebook just because you want to connect with Facebook, but it might be connecting with Facebook to understand friends and relations that are going to be coming to a given show, so that you guys can plan better, right? So things like that. It's about adding value, not necessarily just connecting a network. So it's important to kind of curate your engagements that provides value to the overall fan experience. And at that point, it might require some connection via Facebook and some Spotify and so on. But the beauty is when we're taking a look at all of that, we call that affinity data in our platform. It starts to create this holistic view of your interest and interactions. That is 100% owned by the property. So from that perspective, it's not resold. It's not done any of those things. It's really to improve the experience for that particular property owner.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about what other types of specific insights that a promoter might get about their fan and then what they do with those insights?
Well, in today's world, data is king, right? So imagine, you know, if you are looking at a festival that you've just launched, you've given a list of lineup of artists that you brought in, excellently curated. But as fans do connect onto the overall platform, we start to understand which artist actually is shining the most. You might have a headliner that's the biggest thing, but all of a sudden there's somebody else that pop up. Case in point, ACL, Lizzo. Lizzo was booked, a couple of years in advance. She had a side stage. I was literally there during her performance, and it was crazy. I think there was probably 70 to 80% of everybody at ACL in that corner of the venue. Um, it's not necessary that you can kind of predict a lot of these things when you plan it, but with data, you have a much better chance of doing it. So from that perspective, our ability to even surface additional upcoming artists becomes pretty important for the promoter, and potentially identifying who they want to bring back, or those that that really were just starting to generate a lot of interest within the fan base, but they never had the overall life cycle that they could have had, and so they might bring it back on a following year.
Okay, gotcha. So, what else does Tradable Bits do to help promoters improve marketing? Are there any other kind of features or use cases that you want to make sure to mention?
Yeah, so when we're dealing with this thing, it's about the fan journey, right? So when you're dealing with festivals, most of the time, and a lot of people may not know this, in general, you might get 20 or 30% of the people come back on a given festival. Some festivals much higher, but in general, it's about that, which basically means you got 70 or 80% new people you have to find. That's really challenging. If you're not dealing with data and you're managing it in a particular way, you are literally starting fresh every year. Um, so from our perspective, our platform kind of takes a look at leveraging, friend connections, experiences that they may have had, finding people that are more relevant, and automating that. So when you're dealing with social and marketing, let's say in advertising in today's world, it's not about running a segment audience that you ran a report on today, that was historically going back a week or 2 weeks. It's about what happens right now. So from our perspective, we're integrated directly with audience creations inside Facebook, Google, Snapchat, Spotify, you name it, all the different networks that are best utilized. As soon as someone buys a ticket, we remove them from the advertising model. We find more people like them. So the system, the machine learning, takes in control to improve the overall strategy for the advertising, to the point where our in general, overall, if you put $1 into the platform for advertising, we're getting about $47 back. So that's 47 times 47 return on ad spend, which is
Mm.
huge. Industry average is way less than that. So uh, what it does do is that it provides you an opportunity to maximize your overall ad strategy, your spend, and you're also not pissing off people, right? I see this a lot, where
Hmm.
ads show up and someone's going, why are you, this is not relevant to me. Why are you showing me ads to piss me off? And that's the worst part. I see it time and time again. So the important part is just making sure that these things are automated. They're less intrusive, and in fact, if it's done right, it wouldn't even look like an ad. People will be mentioning it, tagging it, commenting on it, and it's more organic. And when that happens that way, then you truly get a far more bigger value of the overall brand and the experience the fans are having with regards to your event.
Got it. So, given all these different kind of optimizations you have around finding fans, segmenting them, deepening insights, retargeting or targeting as appropriate, what type of traction have you gotten in terms of your client base?
As a company, we've one of the things that's unusual for us is that we've never raised any money. We're self-funded. This is unusual in a technology world because everybody always raise money and that's how they build the product. For us, we focused on building it in a gradual state and working our way up. Today, our traction, it's amazing. We have the largest promoters in North America from Live Nation, C3 Present, Superfly, AC Entertainment, Country Nation, you name it, they're on our platform.
They're all currently using you?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, cool.
all of those guys. So if you go to Lollapalooza or like I mentioned, Bonnaroo, Gubball, or even some of the events that are in Mexico, Corona Fest or whatever. All of these things are leveraging our platform to improve the fan experience. Now, the beauty is that we've also done sports. So on the sports side, we have NBA teams from the Raptors to Trailblazers, Mavericks, NFL, NHL, and we expanded into Australia. We have the AFL, which is the Australia Football League, and as we expand down in Australia, we got Secret Sound, and obviously all of those promoters down there as well as we expand out. So it's been amazing, amazing traction in Mexico, Sessa, and so on. So it, we're kind of this the challenge when we're dealing with music and when you're selling a product like ours. It is a very competitive market, and it's not about us. So for us, it's about empowering our partners in this case, and so our branding never shows up. But if you talk to any of these companies, we're kind of like the hidden secret, hidden gem that's in the background that's helping this machine work pretty smoothly.
Got it. Would you be up for sharing a bit of a case study from one of your real life music related clients? Maybe pick one and tell us a little bit about kind of how they've used Tradable Bits and I don't know how much you could say, but it'd be interesting to hear a little more specificity about how this kind of rolls out, how it's implemented, what kind of insights come out, how it changes the behavior of a promoter and leads to results.
Sure. One, all there's too many to highlight. I mean, all joking aside, there's a lot of articles that we've kind of put in our blog for case studies, and by going on Tradable Bits blog site, look at case studies. There's many there. In the most part, when we're taking a look at these strategies, there's really three major categories. So I'm not going to talk about which one because they're pretty well, when you're dealing with festivals, they're pretty well similar, right? First strategy is really win back. How do you get into a scenario where you make sure you can leverage people to buy early, right? So when you're taking a look at that stuff, there's a huge strategy to make sure that people buy tickets early on. Bottom line in the industry, tickets sell tickets actually, right? The more people buy tickets, there is more an opportunity of a lift to buying more tickets to increase to get to the point where you have sellout. I can think of one festival that started early a couple of years ago that on their first year they used the platform, engaged the fans to fully understand it. The second year they sold out 6 months before the event. And so when you do that in a strategic way, you have the best opportunity of selling out tickets as soon as possible. The second thing is finding new people and sponsorship. So when we're dealing with these things, a lot of the festivals, they have multiple different ways to make money. Certainly, sponsorship is one of them. And so having a platform that allows you to kind of roll out some engagements where sponsorship activations happen, whether it be giveaways or connections within the fans to kind of surprise and delight, it makes it so much easier to do. And so several of our um, all festivals are going through these things as part of their overall ecosystem for each of the phases that they deal with. And then the last bit is is really getting to the point where you're trying to leverage on the artist side. The real reason why people go to festivals is really because they want to see the artist, right? There's ways to kind of give back to the artist depending on which festival you're dealing with, so that they increase their overall fan base. So in some cases, we've seen and tracked an artist that probably were not getting as much stream in a particular region, and then prior to and during the event and after the event, see a dramatic increase in consumption of their music within the region. And so there's ways to strategize through that with the promoter, to maximize the opportunity for the artist to leverage the given festival they're going to be going to.
Got it. That brings me to a question. Do these tools work for record labels?
Yeah, so it's interesting. When we first rolled this thing out, uh, it was really to centralize the database to understand affinity, right? And I have to say, like in the last 2 years, I've seen the labels do a lot more with data. But 5 years ago, I mean, we've been around for 10 years. Early on, the record labels were really, they're just selling music. Their whole ecosystems dramatically changed to full 360, right? So they are far more interested in eventually owning their data. And so we have some labels that are eventually coming on board. There's a huge learning opportunity for a lot of the labels as well, right? And understanding what data can do for them in their business. But definitely, from our perspective, they're quite interested in the fact that they can centralize all their data in one location. They can take a look at what fans are potentially, uh, you know, prefer to listen to, rather than taking a look at Facebook likes. Which, when was the last time you liked something on Facebook on a page? So really, that really opens up a whole bunch of different conversations. And also the other thing, that the fact that we do so much in automation and advertising and hyper targeting in automation for that. I mean, imagine the amount of dollars they spend for to track streams on advertising, right? So is there a conversion metric that's available for that? And so some of the labels that we're starting to have those conversation with is quite interested in looking at maximizing their ads. And bottom line, the data from a global perspective, the labels are kind of broken down into different regions, and they kind of work on their own regions. The world is flat, especially when you're in the streaming world, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, and they have to look at it that way. So rather than looking at things regional, our approach is to surface these 5-star fans internationally, so that they can introduce them to similar artists within the label roster. And it shouldn't matter that the person is in Australia compared to somebody in Vancouver, right? The fact is, the free flowing portion of how we communicate online is very, very different. And so the holistic approach of that has to be different. And the old metrics of labels, unfortunately, were very, very regionalized. And so we're trying to reshape that train of thought, just like how we did on the promoter and side on the music business, and certainly engaging in sports. There's new ways to do things, and as some of the old ways erode, bricks and mortars disappear. You really have no other choice but to really evaluate a new way of doing things. There's a new paradigm, and so getting to the point where you can fully understand that new paradigm can allow you to start moving to the next stages.
Gotcha. Let's bring this up to speed with where we are temporally. We're a month, 6 weeks into springtime now. I'm curious what you're noticing and what you've been up to since the COVID-19 related shutdowns have impacted certainly the live industry, if not certainly the entire music industry. How is that influencing what you're working on these days? Especially with so many live events that are either canceled, delayed, or kind of just still pending on when they're going to get rescheduled.
Yeah, no, great question. Who isn't impacted by COVID-19? Like we're all impacted. Um, this industry, sports music industry, is fast paced, right? It's so much rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. That you don't really have any time to reevaluate, restructure. But COVID-19 has just literally done that. Now the engine is stopped. We're able to work with our customers and partners to evaluate improving operations. um, it's a huge metric change, um, which in reality it's a silver lining, right? Because yeah, sales are not happening, awareness and all that other stuff. There's a lot of things that have just kind of put on hold, or postponed in some actions. But this gives us an opportunity to really hone in and evaluate, where things were kind of, we didn't have enough time for this, we didn't have enough time for that, and then now we do have plenty of time. And so we're working with automations, to improve. So once the engine does kick in again, and wherever it kicks in 6 months from now or maybe a year, they've already prepared for a lot of these things, so that it's an easy start. So
So
uh,
you're leaning into development. Is that what you're saying?
well, development, yeah. I mean, today we got a platform that is very integrated within the enterprise, right? So when we deal with a lot of when I call rinse repeat, is just, hey, this is the way I normally do it. This is how I turn up a tent, and this is how I turn it down. Well, why have you been doing that? Well, because this is the easiest thing for me, and we use the same tool all the time. Today's world, well, that's not necessarily true anymore. There's other tools to use. And so it gives them an opportunity to reevaluate and improve, their overall operations that way. The other thing too is that COVID-19 you know has really transitioned, doing more live streams and activations, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are more people at home consuming content than ever before. Also, fans, including artists, athletes, and brands, are facing the same obstacle, right? Our tech allows them to engage their fans in the digital world. So we're doing more group knowledge exchanges. The other thing too, I find, everybody wants to come together and to see what best practices are in the industry. you know Before we had months to plan, right? But today we have hours or days. Like, I feel like Jean-Luc Picard have every day going status report, like we're trying to figure out what's going on. And we can adapt very, very quickly, and we have to shift and change dramatically. So certainly today, COVID-19, what it's done is really forced us to get to where we were probably going to take an extra year or 2 years to get to. Our ability to consume content and how we interact online. I mean, who'd have thought Zoom was going to be a conversation piece? Doing Hangouts and so on, where that's a common language for somebody who's even 60 years old.
Right.
So that might have taken 5 years to get to, and here we are. It's the reality. We've got friends that are doing online karaoke, right? You've got take a look at the different channels that are being leveraged. For example, you got Twitch live streaming at home concerts, like whether it's being done by bands in town, linking you to when these shows are happening, or Fortnite, concert like Travis Scott just recently did. Really, we might not see live events for the next 8 to 12 months. Then some of the work we're doing on live fan engagement will be a game, really game changer to connect fans in unique ways. From donation, merch sales, relevant sponsorship. All of these things are still valid, and they can transition online. We know that, but I'm also quite excited in that I think live events or concerts or getting access to this content, I think will become far more ubiquitous once we do have an opportunity to come back and gather again. So some of the strategies that we're rolling out now, I think, are long lasting. I think they will last, and they will continue even when COVID-19 passes.
I think you're right. I think habits and rituals are changing as a result, and once those habits are formed, it's not like they're going to disappear just because people can now go out of their house or go to a show. So I think it's super interesting. We've been focusing a lot on the podcast about live streaming, remote collaboration, music making at home, all these kinds of things that all of a sudden are placed in the spotlight because of other limitations. Are some of your clients actually using Tradable Bits around live streaming?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. There's a few. Unfortunately, like I said, pre-show, I can't talk about. We could do a follow-up
Hmm.
once they do release.
Right. Yeah.
So and it's soon. It's soon. Like I said, it's
Okay.
before it was months, and now it's days and hours. So, but absolutely, there's a lot of cool ways to engage fans. Fans want to connect, man. They really do. They want to get to know these. The most interesting part about what COVID-19 has done is brought the fans to the home. I
Hmm.
mean, like who'd have thought that you can watch somebody like Nora Jones sing right off of her piano in her in her living room, right? Like
Nice.
that's what is that? Like you would never would have thought that a year ago. So so I think there's some real opportunities that have reshaped our minds. And so our technology, as we go and through that, we're finding ways to engage fans in a real time basis rather than comments, right? I find people will stream content in different things. Some people might want to prefer to watch on Instagram, YouTube, or Twitch. Their streaming of choice. But bottom line, I think the artist or the brand needs to bring it back home and find ways to kind of engage both somebody watching TV, even if I'm live streaming a YouTube clip on TV, why can't I engage via my mobile phone at the same time looking at that content? Because we live in the world of today now. And so some of the tools we're rolling out is just that. It's going to be pretty fun, getting people to connected that way.
Cool. Since you're looking at this kind of music tech space quite a bit, being in it and have kind of an interesting perspective coming from sports and live concerts, as well as being aware of the record labels, are there other trends that you're keeping an eye on in music in the music tech space these days?
Yeah, first of all, there are certain companies that are continuously innovating and adapting changes, right? So I love Spotify. I consume Spotify. I use it every day. Yes, they're a technology partner. We work with them closely, but they're one of those giants that is still being run like a startup. So I love it, right? So there's huge opportunities in what they're doing to help the industry, the artists, and so on. Bands in town. I mean, these guys, they pivoted and changed so quickly from tickets where the shows are to where live streaming were, right? I think I heard a podcast you guys did
Yep.
with Fabrice. Like that stuff is awesome, right? Like, because you have to adapt quickly. Because we build a platform to help the industry, and so that they don't have to build it themselves, right? And so, companies like these are constantly doing that. There's another company based out of New York. It's an AI bot, Satisfy. Those guys, a small group, but they've done a tremendous amount of stuff in the sporting side. And I think they've done some stuff also with COVID-19 and helping people better understand the
What did
pandemic.
you say the name of that company is?
Satisfy, yeah,
Satisfy with an
yeah,
I
with an I,
at
yeah,
the end. Yeah. Okay.
Satisfi.
Okay.
Community has done a good job, on the SMS texting world. The very excellent spin on the current technology stack. Chart metrics. I mean, they've found a way to boil the ocean of data that's tied to music. Linkfire. I mean, I met the CEO in New York. We had a great chat. They're obviously trying to make it easier for artists to get out there as well, and so on. So these are some of the companies that I find in the music, or certainly in some cases sports side, that have adapted and communicated a way to adapt their strategies and their technologies for the industry they're supporting.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been great. Is there anything else you want to throw out there? What's next for Tradable Bits, or ways you hope that our listeners might connect with you
Yeah,
as we wrap up the episode?
absolutely. First of all, one of the things that I feel like I'm doing a lot is education, right?
Mm.
I am trying to teach people that there's a new way of doing things, and there's huge opportunities and benefits. And so coming on to a podcast like this is definitely fantastic, and we're going to try to generate more articles to kind of get people to understand there's ways to leverage in especially in today's world, data. We are, it's funny, we expanded, we launched out in Australia, just literally in February, just before everything just went kaput.
Hmm.
We were looking to expand into Europe, so we kind of put that on you know postponement for now, pause it until 2021. And same thing in Mexico, so we're expanding internationally. And so, if you find that you're in any of those regions, and I'm very interested in learning more about how you can improve your business, or if you're an artist or a label looking to really leverage, the networks that I talked about in a much more effective way, then yeah, please do reach out. And uh, it's really just to learn more about doing things differently. I think is the most effective thing. It's not even a sales thing. I just want people to know there's ways to live and survive in this pandemic.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, Darshan, it's been so great talking to you. I appreciate you coming on to the podcast. That's Darshan Kaler with Tradable Bits, and that's tradablebits.com, TRADABLE bits.com. Did I get it right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show, Darshan.
Anytime.
And thank you for listening to the Music Tectonics podcast. Please hit subscribe on your favorite podcast service, but also come over to musictectonics.com and you'll find out more. Thanks so much for listening. We'll bring you more episodes soon.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.